Welcome! Today's lesson is going to focus on graphing. There are 3 things I would like you to remember while you watch the video. First, please focus while watching the video. Watch in a place where you can listen carefully. Second, think of 2 questions or thoughts as you are watching. And third, you can watch the video as many times as you would like. Let's get started. First, we're going to look at a line graph. When you first look at a graph, it is very important to study all of the information being presented on the graph. The first thing you should look at is the title. This is telling us the average hourly attendance at a theme park. Then you can look up the y-axis and notice that it is labeled number of people. And the number of people go up in increments of 100. On the x-axis, it is labeled with the word time. And you can see we have many different times listed below in increments of 1 hour. Let's try and answer a few questions about this graph together. Number 1, what is the average theme park attendance at 10 a.m.? What we should try and do, hold on one second, gotta get my pen here. What we should try and do is immediately go and find 10 a.m. Look straight up from 10 a.m. Well, that's not exactly straight, but go straight up from 10 a.m. and you will notice that 300 people were at the theme park at 10 a.m. Number 2, what is the average attendance at 2 p.m.? We should go look at 2 p.m. and go straight up and see what point 2 p.m. is plotted at. You will notice that there are 400 people at the theme park at 2 p.m. Number 3, at what time of day is the attendance the same as at 2 p.m.? Well, we know at 2 p.m. there were 400 people. So this time we can look across the line marked with the 400 and notice that at 7 p.m. there are also 400 people. Let's try another one. This graph tells us the number of students attending the homecoming dance and prom. This line graph is a little more challenging because you can see they have graphed 2 different groups of data on the same line graph. They have labeled that for us to show that the dotted green line shows us how many students were at the homecoming dance, and the solid blue line shows us how many students attended the prom. On the y-axis, we can see the number of people are labeled, and on the x-axis, it tells us the years. Let's look at number 1. During which year was attendance at the prom the highest? You should look along the solid blue line and see which prom year was the highest. The highest plotted point comes during 2001. So 2001 was the year when attendance at the prom was the highest. Number 2, about how many students attended that year? So we go back to that same plotted point above the 2001 on the solid blue line, and we go across and see that 400 people attended prom that year. And number 3 asks, during which year was attendance at the homecoming dance the highest? Now we switch our focus to the dotted green line, which represents the homecoming dance. The highest plotted point on the homecoming dance line is also in 2001. This graph is called a bar graph, as we studied in class. Again, please carefully study the graph and all of the information that's being presented to you. The title of this graph is Car Sales over a 6-month period. The y-axis is labeled with number of car sales, and the x-axis is labeled with all the different kinds of cars. Start with number 1. How many two-door coupes were sold during this 6-month period? Take a moment and see if you can figure that one out yourself. Well, we can see that the two-door coupe bar lands, it looks like, right in the middle of the 150 and 200 lines. So we have to ask ourselves, what is halfway between 150 and 200? And we know the answer to that is 175. Number 2, how many sports cars were sold during this time period? Now we are looking for the sports car bar. We can see that it lands on the 100 line. So we know 100 sports cars were sold during this time period. And last but not least, which type of vehicle had the most sales? So now we are looking at the numbers of car sales. And we see that if we look across, the highest bar belongs to the mid-sized truck. We have one more graph to look over, and this is giving us information about a high school fundraiser. You can see that this bar graph is a little more difficult because it gives us 2 sets of data. How much the sophomores raised and how much the juniors raised. Number 1, which class has sold more popcorn tins? Well, you can clearly see that the brown bar is higher than the blue bar, and the brown bar shows us that the sophomores sold more popcorn tins. Number 2, about how much money has the sophomore class raised selling popcorn? Well, in this question, you have to pay very close attention to the word about. That tells us we do not need an exact answer. So when I look at that bar, I think that it is about $250 because the bar is closer to 250 than 200. And last, which item has the junior class sold the fewest of? So this time we're focusing on the blue bars, and we can see their shortest bar is when they sold the popcorn tins. I hope you enjoyed this review and lesson on graphing. Remember to post 2 questions or thoughts on Edmodo. When you post your questions or thoughts, post them to the Middle Math 4 group page. And remember, you can watch the video as many times as you would like. Great job!